Hello and welcome back to our Vectorworks 2026 drafting tutorials. For this project, we're going to be drafting a series of flats. There's going to be a 2-foot wide flat, a 4-foot wide flat, a door flat, and a window flat. We're going to do a set that are 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and 12 feet tall, and then create sheet layers for each of those for printing. So to start this, I'm just going to create a new Vectorworks file. So new, and I don't need it to be a specific template. It can just be a blank document, so I'll say OK. And I'm going to start by double checking that my document settings are units in feet and inches with fractional rounding and an 1/8 inch tolerance. Okay, and I'm going to come down here and verify that my line thickness is defaulting to 7. And from there, I'm ready to start. So as we come into the drawing, it's obviously going to put us in a top plan view to start with, and we're going to be drafting these 3-dimensionally. So we're actually going to start with a back view. We're going to be looking at the back of these because these are ultimately going to be construction drawings with the framing of how we want these flats to be constructed. So I'm going to start with my rectangle tool, and I'm going to put it right here on this plane. And I'm going to tell it that I want this rectangle to be 2 feet wide and 8 feet tall. Not 2 inches, 2 feet. There we go. And I've got my rectangle. From here, I'm going to go ahead and extrude this. Remember, that can be found under Model, Extrude, or the shortcut is Command E. And I want to extrude this 1/4 of an inch, which is going to represent the 1/4 inch luan that I'm facing these flats with. Hit Enter, and now we've turned this into an extrusion. If I come up to my Object Info palette, it'll tell me that this is in fact extruded. It's 2 foot by 8 feet, and it's extruded 1/4 of an inch. So that's perfect. The next thing I want to do is draw my 4 by 8 flat. So again, I'm going to activate my rectangle, and I'm going to hover it down at this endpoint just so that I know that I'm keeping the bottom of these flats in line with each other. And I'll click to start and tell it that I want this to be 4 feet by 8 feet. There we go. And I will click to complete that, and then I will extrude it 1/4 of an inch, and that's all set. The window and door flat of each of these sets can be done based on the 4 by 8 flat itself, and then removing the solid section out of that. So I'm just going to select my extrusion that's my 4 by 8 flat and duplicate it, Command D, and then I'm just going to grab this bottom corner and drag it over reasonably spaced, and I'm going to do that once again. So again, Command D, and drag that over, and now I essentially have blanks that I can work with. This first one's going to be our door flat, and I know that my door is going to be 2 feet 9 inches wide by 6 feet 6 inches tall. So I'm going to start a rectangle. Doesn't matter where I draw it. I'm going to start it right here and tell it that I want this to be 2 feet 9 inches, and I want this to be 6 feet 6 inches, and it's going to draw my door. That'll be the opening for that. From here, I'm going to grab the bottom midpoint of that new rectangle and drag it up to the bottom midpoint of this extrusion. You can see that it's faded. There's a faded outline of the door in here. That's because the rectangle that we've drawn is actually behind this extrusion on that working plane, which is just fine. We can still see that it's there and it's still selected. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude that, and I'm going to extrude it 1/2 of an inch so that I know that it's going all the way through that flat. There we go. Now we can see that our extrusion is here. I'm going to select both of those items and come up to model, since I'm dealing with a three-dimensional object, and I want to subtract solids. This will allow me to select which of the objects I want to subtract from. The bold line is essentially the object that any solid will be subtracting from, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to click OK, and it will remove the section that is my door. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for my window. My window is going to be 2 feet 9 inches wide, or excuse me, 2 feet 6 inches wide by 3 feet tall. So again, I'll start a rectangle, doesn't matter where. I'm going to make it 2 feet 6 inches by 3 feet, and I'll click to make that rectangle. And again, I'm going to grab the bottom midpoint and put it at the bottom midpoint of that flat. And then I'm going to move it, remember Command M, and I'm going to move it up on the Y offset by 3 feet. And now we can see the outline of where the window is going to sit within that flat. With that rectangle still selected, I'm going to extrude it. A 1/2 inch again is going to work just fine, so I'll say OK. And then again, I'm going to select both of those items, model, subtract solids. I want to subtract from this larger one, so I'll click OK, and it removes the section that's going to be my window. From here, I'm ready to start drafting the framing of my flats, and I'm going to do that using the double line tool. So I'll select that in my basic tool set. I'm going to make sure that left control line mode is selected, and I want my separation to be 3/4 of an inch. The framing for these flats will be built out of 1x3 lumber, and I know that a 1x3 is 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to click on my preferences menu here just to verify that I've selected create polygons, so every time I draw a double line, it will go ahead and finish that polygon for me. That looks pretty good, so I'm going to click OK. I'm going to zoom in on my 2x8 flat to work on its framing. And here's where Vectorworks does a very handy and helpful thing. If I have my cursor on the face of an object, it will change the color of it, highlighting it, saying that any object will be drawn on that face. So, for example, if I go to this endpoint, but I'm not on the face of the back of my flat, and I draw my 1x4, or my 1x3, excuse me, I've drawn it, but I've drawn it behind the actual face, and you can see it kind of outlined right here. That's definitely not what I want. I want to be able to see the framing on the back of my flat. So I'm going to come to this endpoint, but make sure the face of the flat is highlighted, knowing that I'm drawing on that face. And I'll drag it over and click there, and now I have created the top rail of my flat on the back face of that facing. From here, I want to extrude this so that we are drafting our flat three-dimensionally. So again, Command E, and because it's 1x3 lumber, I know that a 1x3 is 2.5 inches thick, so that's what I'll tell it I want the extrusion to be, and I'll click OK, and it will execute that extrusion. From here, if I click on my flyover tool and just move this a little bit, you can see this is the facing of my flat, this is the framing of my flat, which is exactly what we're looking for. In our current view drop-down menu, I'm going to go ahead and go back to a back view, since that's where our framing is going to be. And from here, I can mirror this top rail across the flat to create the bottom rail. Remember, when we're constructing flats, that our rails always want to cap our stiles, so we're doing those first. So with that selected, I'm going to activate my mirror tool in my basic tool set, and I'm going to verify that duplicate mode is selected so I know I'm creating a duplication. From here, I'm going to go just to the center of my flat and drag it out to the left, and that extrusion will be duplicated, creating my bottom rail. From here, I'm going to go back to my double line tool to draft the style of this flat. So I'm going to come up to this endpoint of my top rail, and I'm going to draw it down to where it intersects with my bottom rail. There's the two-dimensional version of my style, so I'm going to go ahead and extrude it. I want it 2.5 inches as well, so that's great. Click OK, and that extrusion is now representing that style. From here, I can just mirror that across the flat again to create the other one. So with it selected, activating my mirror tool, I already know that I'm in duplicate mode. So I'm just going to come up to the midpoint here and drag it straight down so it mirrors it straight across, and it creates my other style. From here, I need to add in a toggle halfway up, so 4 feet. So again, I'm going to select my double line tool, but this time I'm going to change to center control line mode. And I'm going to go right to the inside midpoint of one of the styles and click to start and drag it over to the inside midpoint of the other style. And now I've drafted in my toggle. I still need to extrude that, so Command E. I definitely want it extruded 2.5 inches like everything else. So I'll click OK. And now I've created the basic framing for my 2x8 flat. Again, if I come to my flyover tool and click that and rotate it a little bit, you can see how I've got all of my three-dimensional framing on the back side of the facing of my flat. I'm going to go ahead in my active view and change it back to a back view since that's where I'm working. And I'll move on drafting the rest of the framing for my other flats. Next is going to be the framing for my 4x8 flat, which is the most common type of flat that we build in the theater. And I'm going to draft it exactly the same way that I did the 2x8. So I'm going to come to my basic line tool. I'm going to go back to left control line mode and verify that I'm still at 3/4 of an inch. That looks good. So now I can just come in and draft my top rail, select my mirror tool, mirror that across the bottom. There we go. I'll go back to my double line tool to draft this style. I'm going to come to this endpoint and draw straight down to my other rail. So I've created my style. And I'm going to mirror that across the center of my flat. Lastly, I'm going to take my double line tool and switch to center control line mode and go to the inside midpoint of one style and drag it over to the inside midpoint of the other style. I haven't extruded any of these yet. They're all just two-dimensional. So if I grab my flyover tool and I rotate this, you can see that none of that has any depth to it. So I definitely want to extrude those. And I want to extrude them individually. If I select all of these items, select the whole thing, and I'm going to hold shift and select the facing to deselect that. So now I have just those rectangles selected. And if I extrude all of them, it's going to extrude them as one object, which is generally not what I want. But just for purposes of demonstration, if I extrude this 2.5 inches, it'll say OK. It will extrude the entire thing as one object. So here, if I want to select that and move it, the whole thing moves rather than just being able to adjust one component. So for example, if I needed to move the position of my toggle, I wouldn't be able to do that because of the way it's been extruded. So I want each one of those things to get extruded in its own manner. So I'm going to select the top one, say extrude that, and the bottom rail, extrude that, and each of my styles. And my toggle. Great. Now each of those has been extruded as an individual item so that I have individual control, which is what I want. And if I come back to my flyover tool, we can see again that all of my framing has some depth to it through that three-dimensionality. I'll go back to my back view and go on to creating the framing for my door flat and my window flat. Next, I'm going to draft the framing for my door flat. It's going to be a little bit more complicated because it needs more support, but I'm going to do it the same way I've done the other two flats. So I'm going to activate my double line tool. I'm going to come back and make sure I'm in left control line mode and that my separation is still 3/4 of an inch. And then on the back face of my door flat, I'm just going to go ahead and draw that double line. There we go. And that creates the top row for that flat. I'm going to go ahead and extrude it right now. So Command E, same 2.5 inches. So that's good. I've got that extrusion. Next thing I need to do is the bottom rail for my door flat. So each side of these needs a rail to help support it. So I'm going to click in this bottom right endpoint and drag it over. Oh, I wasn't on the face, so I'll get rid of that. There we go. Now I know that I'm on the face of that flat. Click there. And I've got the bottom rail for that side of my door. I'm going to go ahead and extrude that little section. And from here, I can mirror that across the width of the door to create the rail for my other side. So I'm going to come to my mirror tool. I already know that I'm in duplicate mode. So I'll come to the midpoint of my door, drag it straight up, and now I've created the bottom rail. Next, I need to draft in the styles, just like I did with the 4x8 and the 2x8 flats. So I can do that one of two ways. I can go ahead and reactivate my double line tool and draw those in and extrude them, or I can select the existing rails from my 4x8 flat and duplicate those, Command D, and just drag those duplications over, and there they are for my door flat. The next thing I need to do is draft a toggle across the top of my door to help support that. So for this, I am going to go back to my double line tool, and on the face of the back of the door, I'm going to grab this endpoint in the upper right hand corner of that door opening, and then I can come straight across and intersect with this style. I can click to start that there and drag it all the way across till I intersect with the other style and click to complete. And now I've got that polygon representing that toggle. I'll go ahead and extrude that, and now it's in place. I need to draft two more rails now. I need to draft two more styles now for the inside of the door to help with that support. So again, I'm going to come back to my double line tool, and I'm going to come up to the upper right hand corner here, being sure I'm on the face of the back of my flat. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Sorry. Come down to the bottom where I'm intersecting with this rail. Click to start that and drag it all the way up until I intersect with this toggle. There we go. And there's the polygon representing that inside style. I'm going to go ahead and extrude it. And then I can go ahead and mirror it across center to create the other one. So again, my mirror tool, find the midpoint, mirror it across, and I've created my second one. The next thing I need to do is just to create a little bit more support across each of these sections of my door. So essentially put in some smaller toggles. So I'm going to zoom in on the bottom section of my door right here and activate my double line tool. And I want to come right where these two things intersect each other, right where my bottom rail and my style intersect each other. I do want to make sure that I'm on the face of my flat so I don't draw the toggle further back away from that facing, but I'm just going to click to start that and drag my line all the way across to where it intersects with that other style, and I'll click to complete that. And now I've created that other toggle. It's currently faded because it's sitting behind this three-dimensional object right here. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude it 2.5 inches. There we go. And now I'm going to move this up 2 feet on the Y offset. Nope, not 2 inches. 2 feet. There we go. And I've got that new toggle put in place. I'm going to create one more of those, so I have 2 on each side. So I'm just going to duplicate, Command D, and move it, Command M, and I'm going to move it another 2 feet. Say OK, and there's the other one. And now I know that this is going to have the structural support that it needs. I need those on the other side as well, so I'm just going to select both of them by Shift and click, and then I'll mirror them across center like I did the other objects. There's my other 2, and that completes the framing for my door. Next, I'm going to draft the framing for my window flat. It's basically going to be a combination of what I did for the regular flat and the door flat, just to make sure that all aspects of the window are supported. Since the outside perimeter of this is a regular 4x8 flat, I'm going to just select all of the framing from my 4x8 flat, and duplicate those items and just drag them over on top of my flat, and there we go. I've got my framing set on the perimeter. Next, I'm going to draft a toggle across the top of my window. So I'm going to come back to my double line tool in left control line mode with a 3/4 inch separation, and I'm going to come to the upper right hand endpoint corner here of my window opening, and then drag my mouse across till I intersect with that style. I can click that and drag all the way across, and now I've created the 2-dimensional polygon that will become my top toggle of my window. I'll go ahead and extrude it, and from here I will mirror it across the window to create a toggle across the bottom supporting that section. Next, I need to put in 2 more rails on the sides to help support the sides of my window. So I'll come back to my double line tool, and being sure that I am working on the back face of my flat, select this intersection point. Oops, wrong again. Select this intersection point and drag it up to where it intersects that toggle. Looks like I clicked a little too soon there, so I'll just double click and extend that on up. There we go. Now I know it's touching that object. So from here I will select that polygon and I'll go ahead and extrude it. That looks pretty good. And then I can mirror that across the window as well to create the other style supporting that window. From here, I need to add one more vertical support in the bottom section of this flat. And this is really just for instances like if an actor had to crawl through that window, or for some reason you needed a little bit more support. It's really just something that we put in to be safe. So I'll come back to my double line tool, and this time I'm going to switch to center control line mode. I'm going to find this bottom center midpoint of this toggle and drag it straight down till it intersects with the rail. There we go. I've got my polygon, and I'll extrude that 2.5 inches, and that completes the framing for my window flat. So now I've got all of the framing drafted for all of my flats. By grabbing my flyover tool, I can just spin this around and see that everything is correct and in the spot that I want. I'll go back to a back view. And from here, I can start creating groups of each one of these things. So I'm going to select and drag. So I select all of the aspects of that 2x8 flat and Command G to create a group. Same thing for my 4x8 flat and my door flat and my window flat. So now each of those is an individual group. So if I grab it and I move it, all of the components go with it. If I needed to edit that for any reason, I could enter into that group and do that quite easily. So from here, I can create a new sheet layer for my 8-foot tall flats and create individual viewports for each of these flats and get them dimensioned properly. Next, I'm going to start creating my viewports. So like we've done before, I'm just going to zoom in on this 2x8 flat, and I'll activate my rectangle and just draw a rectangle around the perimeter of that. I'm going to nudge it over just so my flat is completely inside that rectangle. There we go. And I'm going to change its pen and its fill to none, so I just have a transparent rectangle. And I'll come up to View, Create Viewport. Yes, I want it to be the crop. And I'm going to call this viewport 2x8. For my layer, I'm going to create a new sheet layer. It's going to be sheet layer 1. And its sheet title is going to be 8-foot flats. I'll click OK. And now it's creating on that proper layer. I'm going to use the drawing label for this since I'm going to have multiple viewports on one drawing. This is drawing number 1 on that layer, and its drawing title is going to be 2 foot by 8 foot flat. I'm going to come down and make my scale 1/2 inch. In my display settings, my view is going to be a back view because that's what I just drafted my framing in. But rather than shaded, I want this to be a wireframe view so you can see the individual aspects of that framing. So we'll make that wireframe, and then we'll click OK. There's my flat on my piece of paper. Like we've done before, I'm going to come up to File and Page Setup and select my ASME A-size paper and click OK. From here, I'm going to take this viewport and move it over to the left-hand side of my page because I'm going to try and fit 4 flats all the way across this page. And I'm going to double-click it to enter into that viewport so I can go ahead and dimension it. So in my Edit Viewport screen, I want to be in Annotations, and I'll say OK. And from here, I can activate my Constrained Dimension tool. That's the letter N, or it's also right here in the basic tool set. And I'll do a dimension line all across my bottom rail, which will tell me that it's 2 feet. And I'll do a dimension line straight up the side of my flat so that it's 8 feet. I'm going to drag this out, let's say about 1 foot 3 inches. In fact, I'm even going to tab in and say 1 foot 3. Great. And then I'm also going to draw a dimension line from this bottom corner to the midpoint of this flat to show where that toggle is going to go. And I'll put that 4-foot measurement right there. And there's all the dimensions that I want for my 2 by 8 foot flat. So I'll exit out of that viewport annotation. That's what my page looks like. That's going to be okay. So I'll come up to my active layer dropdown and come back to my design layer. I'll zoom in on my 4 by 8 foot flat and activate my rectangle tool again and draw a rectangle around that. Again, switching my pen and my fill to none and creating another viewport. This one is going to be 4 by 8 flat. It's still going to be on the 8-foot flats sheet layer. It's going to be drawing number 2. That's great. So here I'm going to say it's a 4-foot by 8-foot flat. Will be the drawing title. Scale is going to get changed to 1/2 inch, and my background render is going to go to wireframe. I'll click OK, and there's my 4 by 8 foot flat. From here I want to move it so that it's in line with my 2 by 8 foot flat, so that all of those common dimension lines reference each other. So I'll come up to this endpoint at the very top of my flat, and I'm going to drag it over till I activate the top endpoint of this flat, and then I'll just pull my mouse over to the right a little bit to right there, and that's a pretty good spot for that flat to be. My labels don't quite line up because of the size of my viewports, and that's okay, I can fix that. And I actually think I like the 4 by 8 foot version better. So I'm going to come back and double click on my 2 by 8 foot flat viewport and go into annotations and say OK. And I'm going to select this drawing label, and I'm just going to drag this endpoint over till it intersects with the endpoint of the other one, and then I'll drag it back once that's activated till it tells me I'm vertically aligned, and I'll let go, and now I've moved that label. That's where I want it. So I'm going to exit that viewport annotation and double click on my 4 by 8 flat and enter it for annotation. I'll activate my constrained dimension line again. That's letter N, and I'm just going to give a dimension on the bottom of this flat so we know that it's 4 feet. I'm not going to worry about the height because it's in line with the 8-foot dimension line from the 2 by 8 flat, so that's easily referenced. I am, however, going to tell it that the toggle is 4 feet just for clarity's sake. Come to the midpoint, say, yep, that's 4 feet as well. And that's all of the dimensioning I'm going to do for my 4 by 8 flat on this drawing. I'll click to exit that viewport annotation, and in my active layer, go back to the design layer again, and repeat the process for my door flat. Next, I'm going to do my door flat, so I'll zoom in here, again activating my rectangle, creating a rectangle all the way around that, and changing my pen and my fill to none, and then creating a new viewport. Its viewport name is going to be 4 by 8 door. It's going to be going on my 8-foot flats sheet layer, that's fine, as drawing number 3. And its drawing title is going to be 4 foot by 8 foot door flat. I'm going to change my scale to 1/2 inch, and I'll change my background render to wireframe. Click OK. And there's my door flat. Again, I'm going to move this so that it is positioned the way I want it on my drawing. So I'm going to grab this top endpoint of my top rail of my door flat and put it in line with my regular flat. And I'm just going to drag that over with it aligned until I get it positioned where I want it. That looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and double click to enter that viewport and annotate it and say OK. So here I need to give a dimension for these toggles, or for these rails, so the carpenters know how wide this section of the flat is before the door. So I'm going to activate my constrained dimension tool, again the letter N, and just put a dimension line on that, and I'm going to drag it down and reference the endpoint of this other dimension line so I know that those are in line with each other and it'll look all nice and neat. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw a dimension line for the opening of my door so we know how wide that is. I'll come down and reference the previous dimension line so those are in line together. and that's 2 feet 9 inches. And then I need to do one for the overall height of my door opening as well. So I'll click there, come up to the top of my door opening, that's 6 foot 6, and just drag that dimension line in. So when I zoom out, there's all of the dimension lines for my door flat. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to exit that viewport annotation. And in my active layer menu, go back to the design layer and work on my window flat. Again, I'm going to activate my rectangle tool and zoom in so I can work a little easier. And just draw a rectangle around that whole flat. Changing the pen and the fill to none. And creating a new viewport. This will be 4x8 window. Again, on my 8-foot flat sheet layer, that'll be just fine. Drawing number 4 is just fine. And its title is going to be 4 foot by 8 foot window flat. I'm going to change my scale to 1/2 inch again and make sure my black background render is wireframe. And there's my new viewport. I'm going to just drag this out of the way so I can see to work on it a little bit easier. And like the others, I'm going to grab the very top corner of that and reference the very top corner of the other flat and give that a little bit of space. And it looks like I'm still a little bit too close because my viewport label is covering up that other viewport. So again, I'm just going to drag it off to the right just a little bit more. Give it a little bit of space. Could be that I need to close up some space between the 4x8 flat and the door flat. So I'm going to select both of the viewports and just drag them over. I'm not even going to drag them, I'm going to nudge it. So I'm going to hold down Shift and press my left arrow key repeatedly to nudge those over. That looks pretty good. Then I'm going to select just my window flat and nudge it the other direction, so Shift and my right arrow key. That looks like a pretty good position. From here, I'll double click my window flat viewport and go into the annotation. And again, dimension the overall bottom of this flat. We haven't referenced to that in a while, so that's a good idea. And I'm going to go from the bottom of my rail to the bottom of my window and say that that's going to be 3 feet. I'm going to say that the height of my window is also going to be 3 feet, and that the width of my window is going to be 2 foot 6 inches. There we go. That's everything I need to reference on my window flat. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that viewport annotation and zoom to fit on the page. So from here, like our other drawings, I need to put in my border and my title block. So I'll come up to my resource manager. I have my title blocks file already open. If you don't have it open, you can go ahead and open it and then click back into this drawing tab to reference that file like we've done before. So here's my ASME A size border and title block. I'll double click on that symbol to activate it, and I'll come over to the page center and double click there to put in my border and my title block. Go back to my selection tool, and with it selected, I'm going to come up to my object info palette and go to the data tab, and now I'm going to be able to enter in all of the pertinent information I need to have here. So for my drawing, this is going to be 8-foot flats. Drawn by is obviously my name. The scale is 1/2 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. And today's date is April 16th. There we go. And now all of that information has been updated in my title block. From here, I can go ahead and save my drawing, save this file. And if I want, I can go ahead and export this sheet layer. However, we need to go back into the design layer. So from our active layer menu, going back to the design layer, here are the 8-foot flats that we just drew. Now you're going to go through and do the same exercise for 10-foot flats and 12-foot flats, referencing the dimensions on the examples that you were given, creating viewports for each of those and sheet layers for each relative height. Then you'll export all of those to a PDF and upload them to Nexus. So you'll upload a total of 3 PDFs, one for your 8-foot flats, one for your 10-foot flats, and one for your 12-foot flats.